The most basic human psychological needs include the need to be seen and heard. Yet, most of us spend so much of our time afraid, so much of our lives afraid of our own voice. We hide and we silence ourselves and we don't speak up and we don't say the things that we feel like we should say. And we spend so much time worrying about how other people perceive what we say or how we say it. In fact, so many of us never get around to sharing our true stories and how we got to where we are. And today I just want to talk about how to let your voice be heard. And I'm going to share with you the story of the day I stopped talking. And then I'm going to share with you some of the reasons why I moved past it and how I was able to do that. So, the goal today is that by the end of our time together, you will be in a position to stop silencing yourself and to start letting your voice be heard. Are you ready to share your message with the world? Then stick around.
Hi, welcome to Sincerely Speaking. I'm Marcia Amaro, your self leadership coach. Now, what that means is I'm here to help you rediscover your calling, tap into your greatest potential and strengths, and eliminate those things that keep getting in your way and in the way of your success. So, whatever success looks like to you, whether it is in your career, in your business, in your relationships, or in your life in general, I'm here to help you get out of your own way, remove the obstacles, and elevate all of your life to the next level. If you're ready to see everything that you're capable of and see what your life can look like, I invite you to head on over to marciamara.com and set up a 30-minute clarity and confidence call where we will talk about your mission, your vision, your goals, the things that you're here on this planet to create, what might be getting in the way up until now, and some actionable, amazing ways to get out of your own way to eliminate all those obstacles and reach the level of success that you've been dreaming of. Are you ready? Are you ready for the next level? Then stick around to this conversation of Sincerely Speaking and then head on over to marciamara.com and schedule your 30-minute call. Can't wait to meet you in person. Chat soon.
So I've shared this story many, many times, and maybe you've heard it before, and I'll keep it as short as possible. But the day I decided to stop talking was because when I was in high school, my guidance counselor called me over to her office one day. I was really shocked to be called into the office because I was always the good kid that did what I was supposed to do. But when I got there, I didn't even step completely into her office. I was just opening the door, and she snaps at me, "Who do you think you are?" At least that's the tone in which I remember it. Maybe it wasn't the tone she used, but I remember it in that tone. And I just stopped dead on my tracks right at the threshold. And I didn't even step completely into the office because I was like, is she really talking to me? What did I do? Why is she treating me like this? And she proceeded to tell me how people perceived me as arrogant, like that I acted like I thought I was better than everybody else. Obviously, nothing could be further from the truth. I actually thought I didn't matter much. I didn't think I was very pretty or very important or very intelligent or like I deserved being heard anyway. But when she said that, I sat and I felt so sad, and I started thinking about what would make her say something like that. And I came to the conclusion that it must be the way I was talking or the things I was saying. So the easiest way to avoid being seen that way was to just stop talking. And for a very long time, I'm talking about more than a decade, I spent all my effort and all my energy trying to be invisible, trying to hide, trying to not speak unless it was absolutely necessary, and trying to do things that would prevent people from thinking that I was trying to be arrogant or that I thought I was better than anybody. But then, thankfully, after a decade or so, actually, probably a little longer than a decade, of trying to hide and be invisible and trying to speak as little as possible and only speaking really when I was spoken to or when it was absolutely necessary, I remembered a story that I had forgotten about when I was in first grade for a series of circumstances that I'm not going to talk about right now that really don't matter right now. I was given the opportunity to skip a grade, and it was a big decision, but my parents, being the wonderful parents that they are, that my dad was, they decided to give me the opportunity to make that decision. Now, mind you, I was 7. No, 6. I was 6 at the time. But they walked me through some things, whatever. And then the day that the decision needed to be made, that we needed to let the principal know what we were going to do, my dad took some time from work and drove me to school. That never happened. And on the drive to school, he started talking to me about the importance of the decision, what I should consider. should consider before making the decision. And then right before we pulled up into the school, he said something that I have never forgotten. Like I kind of didn't really think too much about it while I was in my stage of hiding. But then when I remembered it, I was like, oh my gosh, I should never forget this again. I should never stop living by this rule again. And what he said to me was this: people seldom regret the things they try, but they always regret the things they don't. And so that became the new driving force for me. And at that point, I decided, you know what? I should try to speak up a little bit more again. I should try to be a little bit more visible again. I should try to spend more time communicating with people and sharing some of the things that I've learned along the way, and maybe even inviting some conversations where I can learn some stuff from other people. So I'm going to share with you the three things that allowed me to stop hiding and start unleashing and liberating and letting my voice be heard. And these three things are three understandings, really, that allowed me to see why it was important, not for me, but for others also. If I shared the things that I had gone through, if I shared the things that I had learned, if I opened my mouth and finally let my voice be heard. And the first thing is that only your perspective will resonate with the right people. I'll say that again. Only your perspective will resonate with the right people. So we all experience different circumstances, right? And even if you share a common experience with someone, you are each going to have different interpretations of what that means, how that affects you, and what you're going to do with it. The greatest example I have of this is when I was 13 years old. And again, if you've followed me for some time, you've heard me say this before. But when I was 13 years old, my mom was pregnant with my baby sister. And at the same time, my dad was diagnosed with a terminal illness that we knew he wasn't going to just get cured from, right? And so it was a very trying time for my family, and it was definitely a challenging time. But with my baby sister that my mom was pregnant and with at the time, there's five of us, there's five siblings. And if you sit with us today and you have a conversation about that experience, we will each give you a completely different perspective or interpretation of what that experience meant and what it did for us, right? For each of us, it was something different. For me, and I can only really speak about my own, you would have to ask my siblings about theirs. But for me, it was a wake up call. It was the realization that I could no longer be the daydreamer that I was up until that time. And it was an understanding that I needed to step up and pull my own weight in the situation, that I needed to help my mom, that I needed to help my sisters, that I needed to be there to support my brothers in some of the things that they were going through as well. But that most importantly, I got to be a surrogate mom when my mom wasn't there. And I don't say that lightly, right? I know, and I always knew that I wasn't going to take my mom's place, but I was the closest thing that my family had to a mom when my mom was helping my dad and taking care of my dad, right? So it shifted the way I perceived myself, my identity, and the way I saw my role in the family in a way that allowed me to mature faster, to test my ability to do certain things, and to notice and to experiment with what I was capable of doing that I didn't think I would be capable of doing before I had this experience, right? In that same way, you have experienced things and you have survived and gone through things that might be similar to what other people are going through, but your perspective and your interpretation of it is going to resonate with the right people who are going to then be able to get some solace from what your perspective is, or maybe gain a little different way of seeing things, a new perspective for their situation, or might even be able to see a way out of something that they thought they were stuck in. Because if you were able to survive something similar and you were able to gain a new perspective or interpretation, then they can too. Make sense? So when you understand that only your perspective will resonate with certain people, and that the way in which you have interpreted and faced certain circumstances can and will inform how other people are able to get out of stuck, how other people are able to move forward, how other people are able to finally see a way out of things and find solutions for things, then you understand that it's important to let your voice be heard. Because in every circumstance that we go through, in order to have interpretations that make sense. And in order to be able to survive those things and move past those things, we create stories and we generate lessons that we get from these experiences that allow us to move forward, right? Sometimes the stories we create are completely fantastic in the sense that they're not really factual, but in our minds and in our brains and in our hearts, they feel true. Like I can tell you, for example, when my dad passed away, it was a very sad time, obviously, but it made it sadder that he died on the day, on the very day that my mom and him were going to celebrate their 39th wedding anniversary. And the even sadder part was that the next day, when we buried him, was my mom's birthday, right? So it was their anniversary, my mom's birthday, and he passed away one day and we buried him the next, right? And it was a very difficult time. There were a lot of people coming. He was very well loved. He was a great, great guy. And so during the funeral, there was a moment when they needed to decide who were going to be the pallbearers so they could lift the casket and put it in the niche in the little place where it was going to be put. And so my brother asked me to help with that. And I was just so distraught. I was like, look, I really don't know. Turns out that my husband ended up asking some people to help. But I was going back and forth because my mom decided to stay in the car and she was watching after my baby, my oldest, who at the time was 8 months old. And so I was going back and forth between the car and everything that was happening and all these things. And at one point, when I came back, I saw at the distance that they were lifting the casket into the space where it was going to be buried. And I saw the 6 people. And in my mind, who I saw were my 2 brothers, my husband, my sister's husband at the time, and my 2 cousins. Those were the 6 people that I saw, right? Well, turns out one of my cousins wasn't even at the funeral. He had a family emergency with one of his kids and he couldn't show up. But to this day, even though I know he wasn't there, if I close my eyes, I see him in that image pushing the casket into where it needed to be. So, what am I trying to say with this? We create stories that help us manage the situations so that we can make a little bit better sense of it and so that we can get past the most difficult elements of it. And it gave me solace in some way to think that both my cousins were there. So my brain manufactured my cousin being there. Right now, in that same way, we generate tons of stories about the experiences we have. We generate tons of lessons around the experiences that we have. And somebody somewhere out there is going to need to hear your lesson, the stories that you created, the things that you were able to creatively imagine as you're going through these situations so that they can see and understand that they're not alone, so that they can see and understand that other people also need to generate certain stories or to learn certain lessons a certain way, or they might even need to borrow your lesson that you learned in order to make sense of the experience that they're going through or that they have just gone through or that they might go through in the future. And those perspectives, those stories, those lessons are only yours, are the ones that are going to make sense and resonate with certain people, right? So only your perspective is going to touch the hearts of certain people and resonate with them and help them through or help them with whatever it is that they might be working through or struggling with. So that's the first thing that I realized, that if I kept quiet, there were going to be people out there who would never be able to see a certain perspective that I learned through some very hard lessons, that they were never going to be able to understand that they're not alone in certain processes, and that they were going to have to go out there and fish for things that I could deliver to them in a way that really resonated with them. And so that was the first thing that allowed me to step into letting my voice be heard. It was understanding that only my perspective would resonate with certain people. And in that same way, only your perspective is going to resonate with certain people. Make sense? Now, the second thing is that only your message will make sense to the right people. Only your message is going to make sense when you're trying to reach certain people. And there are people out there waiting to hear it exactly in the way that only you can deliver it. Because here's what happens. Remember when I told you that there's five of us, five siblings, and each one of us has a different interpretation of what happened when my dad was diagnosed? Well, that's because even though we were raised by the same parents in the same household with pretty much the same opportunities afforded to us, we each have different personalities. We each have different ways of processing things. We were at different ages at the time, right? So we had different life experiences as far as being alive different period of time. We had different circles of friends. We had different experiences in the sense of the oldest had 2 years being alone with mom and dad. The second didn't have any time being alone with mom and dad, but he had time being just him and his brother. So two boys together experiencing certain things. Then I was born the only girl for 7 years, right? Then my next sister was the youngest for 6 years, but she had that distance between us, right, in age. And then my baby sister's 13 years younger than me, and she was born in a household where my dad was already sick, right? So there's all these differences. Even though we were raised by the same parents in the same house, in the same town, went to the same schools, even, but the experiences that we had, the unique perspectives that we had, the unique stories that we created around those experiences, the influences that we have, the shows that we watched, they all added different dimensions to the way we proceed and the way we interpreted things and the way we manage things, right? So each person is a unique combination of upbringing, experiences, stories, interpretations, patterns, perspectives. And when we bring all of that together, then we create a unique package that nobody else has. And therefore, the message that you delivered is going to be part of that unique package that nobody else can deliver. And your message is only going to make sense, is the only one, is the only message that is going to make sense to certain people because it's going to have with it that unique package that you bring, right? Now, if you don't believe me, think about if you have kids or if you've had any experience working with younger people, think about the last time you tried to teach something to that younger person. And it might have been a lesson, it might have been something that you're asking them to do, it might be something that you are advising them on or recommending for them. And you can tell them a million different times in a million different ways, and it goes in one ear and out the other, right? You've had the experience. It's like, pick up your shoes. You should not leave your shoes out in the middle of the living room because somebody might trip or whatever. And you tell them a million different ways, a million different times. You rationalize, you explain, you threaten, you do all these things, and they still leave the shoes in the middle of the floor. Then suddenly, somebody else that is not even part of the immediate family comes in and says, dude, you shouldn't leave your shoes there. Somebody might trip. And they're like, oh, yeah, you're right. And they go and they pick them up, right? That's a silly example, but you know what I mean. You tell your kid the same thing a million different times. They don't listen. Goes in one ear and out the other. Then somebody else tells them the exact same thing, sometimes even using the exact same words, and suddenly it makes sense to them. It's because it was packaged in a different packaging, right? It was a different person. So it came with a unique perspective. They see that person differently. The authority or the connection that they feel with that other person is different than what they feel from you, right? The familiarity might be enough. You're too familiar, right? And so suddenly it makes sense, even though it's the exact same message. In that same way, only your message will make sense. Only delivered from your lips, based on your unique combinations of things, is going to make sense to the right people. So that's the second thing that I realized and that I invite you to think about, that only your message will resonate with certain people. There are people out there who get really angry with some of the things I say. That's fine. There are people out there who get really excited with some of the things I say. That's fine too. There are people who find they're indifferent. They don't care one way or another. That's fine too, right? But the right people will hear my message and they will go, huh, that makes sense. Now I understand. That's why. Oh, wait. Yeah, that's why. That makes sense, right? And so it's important for you to understand that there are people out there who are never going to be able to make sense of certain experiences or certain things in their lives or certain challenges that they're facing or whatever that might be until they hear you share your message the way you share it, right? And so it's important to let your voice be heard for the benefit of those people that are waiting to make sense of whatever it is that they're going through. And it is your voice and your message that is going to make that possible for them, right? And finally, the last realization that I had was that only your voice will touch the right hearts. Only your voice will touch the right hearts. Have you ever had the experience of listening to someone preaching or teaching or delivering a presentation or even singing, and something in their voice repels you? And I don't mean that they're repulsive. I'm just saying that something in their voice just doesn't sit well with you. And you're like, no, 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 I can't listen to this person longer than a minute or two. And so you shut them off and you go look for someone else, right? So that is because each voice is like a fingerprint almost. Your voice is completely unique. That's why there's voice recognition in certain devices and vaults and things like that, because your voice is unique to you. In that way, your voice is going to be soothing and inviting and amazing and energizing, and it's going to just touch the right hearts in just the right way so that they get from your voice what it is that they've been looking for, whether it is consolation, whether it is understanding, whether it is a way out, whether it is a solution, whether it is just hope that there's something better out there, that there's possibility for them out there, whether it is encouragement, whatever it is that you are sharing, your voice is going to be so soothing and so attractive to the right hearts. It's going to touch just the right fiber and the right note in the right hearts so that they are drawn to you, and so that they are drawn to what it is that you have to share with them, because your voice carries with it a special energy, if you will, right? It carries part of your being, and that is going to touch someone's heart in a special, unique way. I'm reminded specifically of this former student I had. I'm going to call him Carl. That's not his name. His name is not Carl, but I'm going to call him Carl. And Carl, when he entered my classroom when I was still teaching, he was a very somber, not very happy looking young man. He was already 17 or 18, but he was still a freshman in high school. And he walked in dressed all in black with this long hair that covered his face. It was obvious that he was hiding from the entire world. And he sat in a corner. He never even said hello. I asked him his name and he kind of went, Carl, and shut back down. Like, he said the absolute bare minimum, right? Remind you of something I said earlier. He was definitely doing his absolute best to hide, and he was getting really, really good at it, right? So the first day, I asked him a couple of questions. He gave me one sentence responses, one word responses, and stopped talking as soon as he could. The time after I asked him the third question, he looked at me like, "Can you stop, please?" And he didn't say anything to that regard, right? In that regard, but he just looked at me and gave me this look that made it really clear to me that he didn't want to be asked any more questions. The second day, I just let him be. I just didn't ask him anything, let him sit. I just observed. The third day, I asked him to stay after everybody left. And he had this just look on his face like, this woman is going to start yelling at me. She's going to tell me that I'm nasty, that I'm horrible, that blah, 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 blah. You could tell that his mind was going through the script of what he had been said before by other teachers, probably, and what he was expecting to hear from me. But I sat down, I turned my chair so that we would be face to face, and I sat down in front of him, and I just said, "Oh, you're really angry, aren't you?" And he just looked up like, what? Did this woman just say that to me? And I repeated myself. I said, "You're really angry. And I'm willing to bet you have very good reasons to be angry." And he just didn't know what to do with himself. And he even took a big sigh that it signaled to me that I had touched on something. I was onto something, right? And he just looked at me and I said, you know what? You have two choices. You can let the anger determine what you do, or you can do something about that anger. And so we just kept talking. And after that one short conversation, like we didn't even talk for 5, 10 minutes tops. And he left, went to his next class. The next day, he came in smiling, literally smiling. And all I did was use my voice in a way that touched his heart. And I'm sure he might have had other people try in the past. And I'm not saying again that I'm anything special. It's just I was the right voice at the right time for that right heart. And I was able to touch him in a way that nobody had before. And we were really close for the entire time that he was in high school. And I even ran into him a couple of times after high school, and he was so excited to see me, and I was excited to see him. But it was that experience that solidified a lot of the things that I had been working through and working on in my own self and in my business and in growing past my first initial career choices and all these things, right? It was understanding that only my voice would be able to touch certain hearts in just the right way. And again, nothing special about me, just the combination of the two. And I'm sure that there are voices in your world that when you hear them, they light you up. That there are voices in your world that when you hear them, they bring solace and they bring calm and they bring excitement or something that feels positive, that is encouraging, that is supportive, and that moves you forward, that helps you believe and have hope that there is something better at the other side. So here's why you need to let your voice be heard. It's because only your perspective will resonate with the right people. Only your message will make sense to some people. And only your voice has the ability to reach the souls of other people. And so there are people out there who need what you have to offer. There are people out there who are waiting for something that they don't even know what it is. But when they hear you, your voice, your message, your perspective on the world, they are going to recognize it right away and be really excited to finally know what it is that they've been looking for. There are people out there who will not be able to get out of certain things, to step out of certain things until they hear your message, your voice, and your perspective, and suddenly realize, hey, I can start taking steps. And it's not that your message is the only thing they're going to need, but it is going to be one of the keys that are going to start releasing and unleashing some of the things that they need to release and unleash. So do yourself and the people who are waiting for you a favor and give yourself the space to open your mouth and let your voice be heard. And if you need help getting it done, let me know. That's what I'm here for. Just go to my website, marciamaro.com. There's a link at the top to schedule a free 30-minute call. Set it up. Let's chat. I'll help you. I'll help you figure out what it is that you get to bring into the world, how to start releasing your voice, how to let it be heard, how to stop worrying about what other people might think about what you have to say, how to stop worrying about what you might look like or the people who are going to hate you. I have news for you. There are people who are going to hate you no matter what you do, right? But at least if you're doing something meaningful that can impact some lives, you can off-balance the people that hate you with the people that get something good out of you opening your mouth and sharing your message, right? So let's get out there. Let's share your voice. Let's let your voice be heard. Let's put together a plan to become visible and to become more impactful than you ever imagined possible, because somebody out there needs to hear that message that only you can deliver in the way that only you can, right? So as we step closer to the holidays, it is December 4th as I am recording this, right? So as we step closer to the holidays, as we start figuring out what our next steps get to be, as some of us talk about New Year's resolutions or plans that we have for the new year, I invite you to think about how you're going to let your voice be heard, how you're going to use your perspective, your experience, your message, and your voice to reach other lives and to make an impact and make a difference. And again, if you need help with it, that's what I'm here for. And I also invite you to check out the Confident Life Plan Facebook group, in which right now we're going over how to crush the end of 2023 and start 2024 at the highest level possible. And there's other invitations there. I have a challenge coming up. I have other things going on. So just go to my Facebook group, The Confident Life Plan, for more details, or email me at marcy@marcyamara.com, and I'll let you know everything that's going on. You can follow me on social. I will also be posting on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all these things that I have going on for what's left of 2023 and going into 2024. And we will just crush this thing together. You ready? Right. Go, marcyamara.com. Set up a time. We'll chat. And until next time, this has been Marcy Amara, and this has been Sincerely Speaking. I hope you found value in it. Share it with someone that you love. Chat soon. Bye.